Now it's my turn again to provide some more updates about the program. You heard a little bit about this already, and in the spring I told you that we were planning to launch a long-read sequencing pilot this year. This is working with our Kids First sequencing centers, the Broad Institute and the Hudson Alpha Institute for Biotechnology in collaboration with St. Jude. The goal of this pilot is to leverage long-read sequencing technologies such as those offered by PacBio and Oxford Nanopore, and the expertise of the sequencing centers to further inform findings from Kids First projects. And I'm happy to announce that we will be providing long-read sequencing to these Kids First projects to identify structural variants, which you heard a bit about, but they are large genetic aberrations such as deletions, duplications, inversions, or translocations. And these are typically difficult to detect with standard short read whole genome sequencing, which is what the program has primarily focused on so far. But these structural variants may actually be causing these conditions in some cases, and the long-read sequencing could potentially inform the discovery of new therapeutic targets. So briefly, the non-syndromic craniosynostosis project, congenital diaphragmatic hernia, structural heart defects and related defects, the bladder atrophy epistates complex project, the acute myeloid leukemia project, novel cancer susceptibility, which was Dr. Plan's project that she spoke about today, and the project that focuses on Olier disease and Maffucci syndrome. You'll note that the short read data sets for some of these projects are already released to the public, so you could, access them now and begin your analyses, and the rest of them are coming. We used a variety of criteria to select these projects and to allocate resources for a wide range of numbers. So some of these projects, we're really just starting with a few trios to see, what could be found in really critical cases. But in some of these projects, we're actually aiming to do up to 200 samples worth of long-read sequencing. And that is the goal for Dr. Plan's project as well. But all of that is very contingent on whether the DNA is of high enough quality and whether the DNA fragments are long enough to actually detect these variants. So we will be publishing a web page that summarizes the individual details of each of these projects. We weren't able to get it up before today, but stay tuned. It will appear on the Kids First CommonFund website. Okay, strategic planning and phase 2 initiatives. So as you may remember from previous webinars, we have solicited and compiled feedback from the community, external program consultants, NIH leadership and staff to inform our plans for the last few years of Kids First. This feedback coalesced into 7 consensus recommendation themes, and even prior to developing our phase 2 plan, it really helped guide us in thinking about our priorities and our collaborations over the years. But of course, it did feed very directly into the development of the initiatives that we proposed for phase 2. James Coulomb, our working group coordinator, gave a more complete presentation of this process at the recent NIH Council of Councils meeting in September, and the recording and the slides are actually available to all of you to view. I do want to also say we'll give you all of these slides from today, so you have all of the links that are embedded in these slides. But to summarize James's presentation, the thesis was basically that the data resource has already proven to be of high value to the pediatric research community. And the proposal for phase 2 aims to further enhance that value and impact of the overall program, as well as the data resource. So with the $12.6 million annual appropriation that we get in Kids First, for the last 3 years of the program, we proposed 3 broad initiatives. The first one is to continue generation of data from childhood cancer and structural birth defects cohorts, but include the addition of epigenomic and proteomic assays. To continue improving and developing the data resource and to start looking towards how to sustain this resource and its impact beyond the end of the 10 CommonFund years. And to engage experts in activities that increase the value of Kids First data sets. One prominent example includes activities such as the integration, curation, and harmonization of rich clinical and phenotypic data sets that are associated with the whole genome sequence data that we've been focusing on generating thus far. So these concepts together aim to build on the infrastructure, the data sets, and the expertise of the rapidly expanding Kids First community to strengthen data sharing and collaborative discovery, which is of course in line with the program's vision, and these concepts were approved by the Council of Councils in September. And of course, in parallel to these new initiatives, we will continue our existing collaborations, and we will look for new collaborations as they pertain to our goals. We have quite a few collaborations. I've spoken about many of these in the past. They not only amplify the overall impact of the program, but they help us address gaps where we're not quite able to. So today, I'm just going to give you little updates on our, a couple of these, starting with the interoperability efforts. In the spring, I told you that the Kids First Data Resource Center, NHGRI Anvil, NHLBI Biodata Catalyst, and the NCI Cancer Research Data Commons, as Adam had already alluded to, are working together on technical solutions to enable researchers to combine and cross-analyze data sets that reside in these different NIH genomic data sharing platforms. The NIH Cloud-Based Platforms, or NCPI effort, is being driven by use cases that we hear from the research community. And for Kids First, we are focused on federating access to a variety of childhood cancer, structural birth defects, and other pediatric data sets. Many of you may be aware that Anvil, for instance, is hosting the Centers for Mendelian Genomics data, overlaps with quite a few birth defects that we're studying. Congenital heart disease data sets accessible in NHLBI, for example, and of course, pediatric cancer data sets that may be part of NCI efforts. We're also in the early stages of exploring interoperating with additional data sets, even beyond these 3 other platforms. The NCPI group recently worked with the Office of Data Science Strategy to establish a web page where you can learn more about this effort, including the issues we're tackling and how we're going about it. It's pretty technical, but if you want to learn more, I encourage you to check out this link and read about what we're up to. Okay, and I also want to update you on our phenotyping and cross-species collaborations. To guide us in our phenotyping efforts, the Monarch Initiative and the Data Resource Center have been working together to host a series of webinars called the Innovation Across the Phenotypic Translational Divide. And the goals of these webinars are to improve phenotype data collection and harmonization of Kids First data sets and brainstorm technical solutions for facilitating genotype-phenotype analyses. We've convened Kids First investigators and other researchers twice so far to hear about the variety of phenotype data represented in Kids First and to bring light to some of the opportunities we can work on to enable cross-disease analysis. The hyperlinks in Part 1 and Part 2 are summaries, blog posts that summarize what each of those webinars tackles, basically. And you can learn more about the webinar series at this link as well. And we plan to work with the DRC, the Monarch team, and the Comp2 program to continue this momentum with a Part 3 of this webinar series. This one will focus on opportunities for fostering cross-species analysis. For example, how to use model organisms in associated databases and tools to validate the function of variants identified in Kids First data sets. And as Titus mentioned as well, there are opportunities for the CommonFund data ecosystem to sort of facilitate some of this as well. So we're still developing the agenda, but we have saved December 9th as the date, so feel free to mark that on your calendar. And as we solidify the details, we will announce it through our listserv. Okay, and with that, I'd like to kick off the Q&A period. So I still need to open up the Q&A so I can monitor it. But allow me to start by answering some, or David and I together will answer some questions about that we received prior to the webinar. So let's start with what support is available for learning how to use the Kids First platform. And David, are you able to unmute yourself?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, so one question that we get, especially after these webinars, is what types of support opportunities and tools are available to learn how to use and access these platforms. And so Valerie, you can hit the next slide for me. Thanks. And so I would say one of the best places to get started is on our support pages. So we recently rebuilt our support pages from scratch. And now we have a new set of documents, and they're located right on our website, kidsfirstdrc.org. And then right at the top of the menu there, you see the big blue support button. And in that drop down, that will take you to our support pages. And so on the next slide, we've got a image of one of those pages, which might be a great place to get started. So this is our Studies and Access page. And so here, especially if you're interested in learning about what are the latest data sets that are released, how do I get access to them, what are the DBCAP study pages for these different studies, they're all listed here on the Studies and Access page. So this was a great page to keep in your browser and keep visiting as we continue to update our studies. And so, like I believe Valerie said, we've got 14. We're looking to continue to add a couple more, hopefully before the end of the year. Okay, so if you look through the study pages and the support pages and you still need a little bit of help, then Valerie, if you go to the next slide, then the next place that I would hope that you point to is our Kids First support inbox. And so you can email us any questions at any time at support@kidsfirstdrc.org. So we've got a couple different people who monitor that inbox here at the DRC, and we review it several times a week, and we look through the different emails, and if we can't answer them ourselves, then we try to point them to different folks in the center to be able to continue to support your research and answer your questions. And so the support inbox is great because it allows anybody to email in anytime. But sometimes I know, especially in this age of social distancing, having some human interaction is always good too. And so another great place to learn about the Kids First platforms is this new series that we're running, which we're calling Kids First Office Hours. So maybe perhaps like an office hours when you were in college. What the Kids First Office Hours is, it's a monthly support session hosted by me and other members of the DRC. And so when are these sessions? Office hours are held at 3 p.m. Every month on the second Tuesday of each month. And who can show up? Anybody can show up, and that's what's the great thing about it. And so we've had questions from, very basic, how do I run a query, all the way to much more advanced, how do I need help building and developing my bioinformatic pipeline. So it's intended that anybody can show up, all are welcome. And so please, we encourage you to support. And of course, these supporting efforts are going to be, as Titus introduced about the CommonFund data ecosystem, all of our support will be tied in that and connected very well. So our next session, so when is our next session? So our next session is October 13th. That's 1 week from today. In fact, it's 1 week from today, right about now at 3:40 in the afternoon. And so how do I attend? So you can send me an email to my email address right there, higginsd@email.chop.edu, and I'll be able to provide you with login information. If you email the support inbox, we'll be able to get you set up there as well. But ultimately, we have a lot of resources to try to be able to help folks, and we hope to be able to continue to do that moving forward.
Okay, back to me. So these are frequently asked questions. So apologies if you've heard the answers before, but we still get them. So I'm going to go ahead and start with what funding opportunities are available. So currently, the funding opportunities that are still running is the Kids First Exo-1 sequencing opportunity. We had, approval to continue this into fiscal year 21, which is now, as of this week, and but note that the FY21 announcement is not published yet, but we will be reissuing the announcement that was PAR 19390. So we encourage any teams that have collected DNA samples from cohorts of children affected by childhood cancers and/or structural birth defects to consider applying for this, to review the opportunity for what would be required. In general, we're looking for DNA from the patient and their parents. We also have had proposals where there are multiple affected family members per family, so it could be a larger family if you have a scientific justification for that. And also whole genome sequencing the DNA and RNA from the tumors. So that also includes some exome sequencing and RNA-seq for affected tissue if it's a structural birth defect cohort, and of course the tumor if it's a cancer cohort. All of the materials from last year's announcement are still available on the FAQ page, and we do strongly encourage you to review that. We will make we're expected to make only minor changes to the announcement, but the general expectations are the same. I'm also going to take this opportunity to answer a question I got in the Q&A, which is You mentioned high-value data sets and what are the metrics you are using to determine the value of a data set. So these applications are peer-reviewed, but we also have a series of programmatic criteria that we describe very clearly in the funding announcement and the pre-application materials at this hyperlink. But I do want to point out that some of our greatest considerations are the ability to broadly share the data, and then of course the overall value of the data set in the context of all the other childhood cancer and structural birth defects data sets that are already represented in the data resource. I should take the opportunity to just say, make sure you're on the Kids First listserv, because that's the venue we use to announce the next iteration of the X01 when it is open. We have developed an FAQ for other funding opportunities that you may be interested in. We have a section about analysis grants, and again, we have a R03 that is specifically designed for analyses of Kids First data sets or development of tools and workflows to support those types of analyses. But other NIH announcements like the Parent R01 or Parent R03 are also available if that's a good fit for your project. I should also point out that the Kids First analysis R03 here, it has to involve the analysis of a Kids First data set, but there could be co-analysis with another data set as well. We also have a section about ways or mechanisms to support functional validation, as we talked about, using model systems or model organisms as a next step in understanding the variants that are uncovered in these data sets is really important. So you can take a look at these announcements, and again, make sure you're on the listserv. The second most frequently asked question we get is, how do I access data? I think you heard a good amount about this today, but just to summarize again, anyone can log into the portal to search across the data sets that are available. But in order to access the individual level genomic data, you will need to find the data sets either in the portal, or you can even look at the dbGaP listings on our Kids First X01 page. You will need to submit a dbGaP data access request, which will go to the Kids First Data Access Committee. And once you have access, the resources David described will tell you how to take the data from the portal and push it into a Cavatica workspace. If you've never submitted a dbGaP data access request, you can watch this video, and then this PDF is also an overview summary of what is required. How do I get involved is our third most frequently asked question. I think you've seen some of these links thrown at you today, but of course the support email goes to the Kids First DRC here. You can email us at the program at kidsfirst@od.nih.gov. There is both a CommonFund Kids First website, which is the NIH website about the overall program, and a Kids First DRC website, which talks about the activities of the Data Resource Center. And of course, the portal where you can search the data. Okay, with that, we are already getting Q&As, or we're getting Qs. We'll give you the As. Let me see. Titus, we have a question for you, hoping you're still on. How was the CFDE funded?
Hi, Valerie. That's the entire. Sorry, maybe I missed.
That's one question for you. How was the CFDE funded?
The CFDE is funded by the NIH Common Fund through an other transactions agreement.
Okay, thank you. Does Kids First provide any external facing APIs? Let me upgrade Allison Heath. Maybe David can get started on answering this. I'll upgrade Adam back and Allison.
Sure. I know that as far as I may have to actually turn this over to Adam and Allison. But as far as our platform, so the Kids First portal is synced up with Cavatica, which is our cloud-based analysis platform. And in order to be able to do your analysis, you'd move your files from the portal over into the Cavatica environment. So Cavatica is built by a company called 7 Bridges. And the 7 Bridges has developed their own API, which allows users to be able to operate working remotely or working from the command line to be able to move files, copy files, run tasks, and run analysis in the cloud on the Cavatica platform. So yes,
Yeah,
so
thanks, David.
Absolutely.
yeah, and I'll turn it over to Allison. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. So we have a couple APIs that follow some of the GA4GH standards that are implemented by Gen 3. So these are the DRS endpoints, as well as pretty standard authentication and authorization. Building the portal, there's a pretty high performance GraphQL API that I think at this time I wouldn't recommend unless you're a very advanced user. Over the next quarter, we're rolling out a new set of FHIR APIs, which will be the API standard for our clinical data moving forward, hopefully early next year. And then, as David said, for the workflows and bioinformatics work, Kavatica has pretty nice APIs with pretty thorough API documentation.
Okay, hopefully that helped. For a clinician interested in Kids First data sets, how would they go about getting access? So I can start off by trying to answer this question. Again, the portal is open to anyone. If you have Google or an ORCID login, you should be able to register with that account, and you will have to agree to a click-through agreement to not try to identify or misuse the data. But once you do that, you'll be able to search across all of the clinical and phenotypic data that's available there. But in order to access any genomic data, you would need an ERA Commons account and to apply through dbGaP. I'm not seeing any other questions come through, but I will wait a little bit longer. Is there a way to get metadata of Kids First data portal? To get the metadata of the portal. Allison, do you want to answer that one?
I think this is probably towards your previous question about the APIs. So all that metadata, if you mean like the clinical data and the biospecimen information, that's where we're really moving to more of the FHIR standard. Currently, probably the best way to get that information is if you go to the portal and you do your different cohort selection and querying. You can go and you'll see a way to download the clinical information, the biospecimen information, and have a manifest of all of that right now. But that's what we're definitely pushing hard towards, making that more programmatic with the APIs.
Okay, I got thanks. I also got a question. Do you know what the status of Anvil is? Could you clarify your question? Is that about when Anvil will be live? And I actually don't know if I'm qualified to answer this question, no matter what it actually is. But in terms of interoperability, maybe Allison, could you comment on the status of our interoperability with Anvil?
Yeah, so I think we've been working hard with that team in terms of making the genomic data available via some of the different standards. I mean, as far as I know, Anvil is live and you can log in and they have some of their initial data sets loaded. But as Valerie said, I don't know if we're the best people to be up to date with that, but happy to point you to the right folks who could.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think and from my perspective, the interoperability efforts are very technical, way over my head, but the groups are working really hard on this, and I'm glad we launched that website to kind of let you guys know what the teams are up to. And this fall, I think we'll be digging a little bit more into some of that progress. So be on the lookout for progress on our interoperability with the other NIH platforms. Okay, I actually don't see any other questions coming in. Oh no, never mind. We got that question. Okay, and if that's all, then we will close this webinar. Thank you all so much. It felt like we had done the spring webinar yesterday, so thank you for bearing with us through some of our technical issues today. And if you're interested in learning more about anything you heard, feel free. I'll put that slide up again about the contacts. Here you go. feel free to reach out to us. And, you know, thank you again to Dr. Plon and Dr. Resnick for, and Dr. Brown, Titus Brown. Thank you all for your presentations today, and we look forward to continuing to work with all of you.